stacks on her mind, grinding all day, hustle refined, shatter is ceiling, G's fierce and untamed, boss is a title, wealth is a game.
Hey Dion, I suspect you don't know this song. This is me looking forward into my novel music and sleep. I like this artist. You probably didn't know the song. How many of you know this one? So, welcome back to the Hiring Women podcast, a show dedicated to making conversations about life and money accessible so that hiring women can make confident decisions and live the life they truly deserve. Now, if you've been riding with us for a while, you know I love tying music because I love music. I love tying it to music to any topic we're going to discuss, and especially my favorite musical divas. And so today we have been listening to the sounds of Little Sims. So if you were vibing to this, how many of you knew the song? It's kind of one of her less known songs, but she's an artist I discovered recently. And the song itself is called Protect My Energy. So I just loved that song title for what we're going to talk about today. So in my role of pretend DJ, it's really official or unofficial. Like I said, this song resonated quite a bit because today we're going to be talking about how hiring women can use AI to scale and avoid burnout. And I think this whole idea of AI can be overwhelming for hiring women just for so many reasons. We might think, let's wait, let's deal with AI later. Maybe because we might have a sense it's too hard to figure out, maybe not worth the effort, when it can actually help you to, you guessed it, protect your energy for tasks that you might no longer even need to do, or even, in my case, want to do. So today's conversation is actually one I've been waiting to have because I was trying to find the right person for my community. I was waiting for a long time to have it because everywhere we turn, we're hearing about AI. So we can't even escape it. Believe me, I've tried. I think what hiring women really want to know when it comes to AI is how can they use AI to scale? Is that you, hiring community? Would you like to learn how to use AI, how to scale without losing your edge, without losing your authority, without losing your humanity? Because my guest today is Dion England, and she's VP of Client Experience at Incorporation AI. She's also a keynote speaker and author focused on demystifying AI for people like us and making adoption practical, human, and results-driven, which is what I love. So that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So Dion, welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Amazing.
This conversation.
I think it's going to be a great one. And I was thinking, I wondered if you'd ever heard of Little Sims. So probably not. That's from what you've told me.
But yeah, something new today.
Yeah. And I just love the idea of a song, a song that a woman's singing, talking about protecting your energy. So anyway, let's give her some really big, gratitude for just starting there. We always need to protect our energy as women. So let's start with a hype around AI as we get going. Because if you could speak directly to high achieving women who are already leaders, I'm not even going to take anything for granted because there's so much hype out there. There's so much information, maybe misinformation about AI. Let's talk. What is AI actually and what isn't it? What isn't it? Like, what is it not?
So interestingly, one thing that somebody actually phrased to me, and it actually resonated with me. They talked about artificial intelligence, and we talk about human resources. And how they position it, it's actually an artificial resource to help human intelligence, right? So we see it as this thing, and there's so much hype around it. You're very accurate in describing it like that. So it's really about breaking it down. So it's a tool, it's technology, it's very powerful, much more powerful than technology that we've ever had to deal with before, but it's still technology and it's still a tool. And I think once we keep it in that realm, I think it's easy to kind of wrap our heads around it and understand where we begin and where AI begins and ends as well. Because you have the predictive models, which is exactly what they say, predictions, and an easy one. We've been doing this for years. Whether it's on your streaming apps or what have you, where it says, oh, because you watch this, we think you'll like that. Again, predictive models, just because it's looking at your patterns and it's saying, if X, then Y. And then we have agentic AI, which is like where you actually have agents that are going out and they're doing tasks. And this has been a very growing, this is really where the field is right now, where before it was very simplistic in terms of just go and look at this, something a little bit fancier than Google just going and getting an answer. But now you can string hundreds, if not thousands of agents together. So now they could do very complicated tasks that it would normally take a number of people to do. So that's where a lot of the excitement is. And then, of course, you have the LLMs or the large language models, which are the ChatGPTs of the world, where you're able to then have that interaction and have that more sophisticated sort of conversation with an AI tool.
Wow. So there's the predictive, which is, all this data that's been collected to figure out what you'll like, what you'll eat, et cetera, et cetera. And that's one tool. And I love that you're calling these all tools, because it's a whole other thing. Then there's you're saying these large language models. And what do the large language, remind me what the large language models do again? I understand what.
Yeah. So when you think of like a ChatGPT, where it's able to have very sophisticated conversations, it's able to process, it has judgment and so forth. So that's where those large language models come in. And agentic AI is very specifically agents that are doing tasks.
Right. So, be 2 or 3 people, like you could have these AI agents, and they save you potentially money and time. But we'll get into that. But what I love most is that you're saying that it's, these are tools. They're not replacing humans at this point anyway, because I think there's a quiet fear when it comes to accomplished women in particular, that somehow AI is going to diminish their expertise. So love to know what you'd say to that.
So in terms of it replacing jobs, back to when we talked about the agentic AI, where it can do those tasks. So yes, so now, and we've been seeing this for a while in terms of call centers, for example, would be a simple example where you always have to speak to somebody to get an answer. And then now we started seeing things like those bots. So now you can engage with a bot, and it already knows some of the commonly commonly posed questions. So a lot of answers in there. And then you also have those things where, you call up and then it's a voice recognition again. So you have those that are able to then, so yes, there are jobs that are definitely going to be going away. And what they talk about, and it is concerning, and it is something we need to look at professionally, is those junior level roles, because it's those junior level roles that don't need as much expertise that will go away. But as more advanced senior leaders that have a lot of experience, along with the technical experience, they also have the maturity and leadership expertise. Those folks are the ones who are actually the best to gain. They have the most to gain with respect to some of these models, and like upping their expertise, providing capacity for them. I'm sure all of your listeners are all over capacity, as most of us are. There's just not enough hours in the day. So these are tools that will definitely be able to help to alleviate some of that pressure.
And that, I think, is something so many women in this community need to hear, is some of these tools, the AI agent, the ChatGPTs, large language models, even the predictive technology, can take stuff off your plate. So I'd love to know, because a lot of the high earners that I work with still act like top performers more than they act like they're owners. So where do you see AI maybe creating the biggest leverage shift for women at this level?
I think, again, back to increasing the capacity and moving to those higher level, more strategic scenarios. So you have those things where, yes, helping to answer emails and applications that will help things like that. But
Right.
now having like critical thinking, where you come up with a proposal and it's like, you know what, you can go to one of these large language models and ask it, find the gaps in this for me. So then before you get in front of the board, your executive team, your leadership team, or whomever it is, you can now have those holes poked in your argument up front. And you can start handling some of those objections ahead of time and being ready and prepared for it. So it really helps us to kind of up our game and show us some of our blind spots that maybe we didn't consider. When we think of it as being like a teammate that we can like leverage to be able to just enhance what we already know.
Yeah, I love that you're saying it could be a thinking partner and help you identify the gaps, up your game. Like, I think these are definitely, this is definitely information hiring women need to know, that this is what AI, the possibilities that they can take advantage of with AI. So let's have a few practical applications that we can maybe turn to give some more specificity to what AI can do. And as concrete as we can get is even better. So if I'm a woman earning well, I'm an executive and I'm an entrepreneur or investor, where should I start when it comes to AI? Any specific examples or categories we can look at to kind of help women to start thinking more broadly on how AI can help them?
Definitely. So so like you said, getting very specific, it can be everything from getting ready. Let's say you're having a difficult conversation with one of your team members. It's very challenging, and being able to prep yourself in terms of that conversation. I should preface this, although I know most people know this, especially when you're dealing with those public ones like ChatGPT and so forth. These are open to the internet. So removing any kind of identifiable information, but saying, you know what, I'm going into an interview with somebody who I need to performance manage them on their performance. Here's their personality type. They're very sensitive about feedback. They and so forth, and putting that out there. And then it's able to come back to you with some suggestions in terms of, you might want to position it this way. You might want to start with starting with the things that they do well. I find it's been very helpful in terms of those types of positioning. Another way, so that's one example. Another way, so I tend to often write a lot of business cases. So there are different ways that you could go across making an argument for a particular, to get funding for a particular project, for as an example. So putting out there, here are the 3 different angles that I'm going to take, because here are the 3 main ways that I think that this is going to be a good opportunity for the organization, and throwing it out there and having it come back and say, oh, you should also consider, maybe there's 4 and a 5 that you didn't think about, or going a little bit deeper on them. Again, being mindful in terms of what kind of proprietary information you want to put in there.
Yes.
But I find that we can be very generic in a lot of the content that we put in there. And then we just take what the output is and then customize it to the very specific situation that we're dealing with. So that's one. Another example has to do with, this is actually from the legal space, in terms of, I know a lawyer who sets up their arguments, and then they will then have the AI act as like an opposing counsel in terms of, tell me how you would challenge me in this particular scenario. So again, getting that feedback, debating would be the same thing in terms of, you're positioning, maybe you're asking whether it's a business proposal, whether it's a salary increase, whether it's negotiating for a salary, even putting out there, if you're, this is an exact example. Somebody was being offered a position with a consulting firm, and they just did not know, like, where do I even start? Like, it was a very broad range. And again, putting in there, here are the types of activities that I would have. Here's who I am. Here's my years of experience. And it gave her an outline in terms of very specific what the ranges should be and why, not just a number, but why those numbers. When we use it as that consultant, our own personal consultant, to get that feedback, to get that critical thinking, to challenge some of our assumptions, I find that that's a very powerful way for us to really up our game and strengthen our position and get us in a more confident position walking into some of those scenarios because we're not walking in blind. We've already challenged ourselves and we're prepared for most things that will come up.
Yeah, like so many applications. I love the scenario modeling and, looking at ways to mitigate risk, even in, HR potential situation or some other relationship that you're trying to build, and looking at ways to, put you in the best light with that potential relationship. So I love that. I love that the lawyer one. That's a great one. I'm going to share with the lawyers I deal with. Just the devil's advocate or the opposing counsel. It's funny when you said that. I just kept thinking of the business women I know who are currently using AI that are arguing with their AI. I just think that's such a great. That's such a great thing that you can argue with your AI as you work through the decisions that you want to make.
Yep. There's actually one other application, if you have 1 minute, that actually comes up quite often. I forgot to mention it. Sometimes, especially for salespeople, they have all these slides and they have different clients, different industries, and so forth. And they spend an inordinate amount of time customizing them every time. Oh, I'm going to go to speak to somebody who's in this segment or that segment. And there's great tools that allow you to have an inventory of slides, and a lot of us already do. And then you just put in there, okay, I'm going to be speaking to somebody in the auto industry. This is this is what they do. Can you customize these slides so that it's to this particular angle? And it will go in and it will make revisions to your inventory of slides, because that's a very time-consuming activity as well.
Mm-hmm. It is. I've actually recently, I'm just so shocked at how many things that AI can save me time doing. I had a whole bunch of a series of presentations I did on basically the aging population. So aging parents and how my clients can help their aging parent deal with their finances, just because unfortunately that's the next 2 decades or 3 decades we're going into. So I had these series of podcasts I had done on that. And the AI was able to take all of the podcasts and turn it into a PowerPoint presentation for another organization I had to speak with. And it did it, 10, 15 minutes was done. I was just like, that would have taken hours to transcribe everything. Yeah. Anyway, it's a huge time saver.
Yeah, so you do the work once and then you can use it in multiple different ways.
Exactly. It was just watching it take all the information from all the different sessions I did. I was like, whoa, this is so crazy. Mm-hmm. Now I want to talk a little bit about scaling influence and intellectual property. So many hiring women are really under monetizing their intellectual capital. I was just talking about how I wanted to leverage my capital a little bit more with these presentations I did and I'm currently doing. I want to know if you have other examples of how AI can help externalize expertise.
So in terms of putting yourself out there as a thought leader, which is great. So I use AI a lot in terms of crafting some of my LinkedIn content. For me, it's very important for it to be my voice. And I sometimes see LinkedIn posts and it kind of sounds with some folks to be a little bit generic. So that's very important to me because I have a very specific voice, but definitely anything from coming up with idea generation to refining something, or maybe you have 3 points and you just are looking for a 4th point to put in there. It's a great collaboration type of tool, but it's very important for me to have my stamp on it. So what finally goes out there has my specific voice. I always go in and change things around to make sure that it reflects me. And also taking very similar to what you just described about taking podcast content and making it into a presentation. This is the same way that you can take a presentation and you can take snippets and make it into posts about different topical items. This is where you can also make it into short videos, like in terms of if you're ever doing speaking and so forth. So again, back to taking the content that you've already spent the time to create and then breaking it out into different formats, whether it's Instagram, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's a keynote that you're doing, whether it's a presentation that you're doing to a client or to a team member. It really allows you to repurpose that work.
Yeah, and I think that leverage is a shift that I think if more hiring women knew how much more capacity they'd have if they had all of the content they have out there that they've created, how they can repurpose it, leverage it to become more of a thought leader. They don't have to necessarily use AI's version of who they are. They could use what they have already and repurpose it and build that thought leadership as you're talking about. So I think that's something that I'm sure hopefully people will take away from this episode. Now, finally, let's talk a little bit about maybe why more high-earning women aren't doing this. And I notice high-achieving women sometimes resist AI because they're used to being sometimes the smartest person in the room. Do you think AI challenges people's identity?
Well, I know that and I'll even use myself as an example because I'm very much, as I mentioned to you about my voice, and it has to have my stamp on it. I don't want to sound like some generic tool kind of thing. But I'm telling you, once people start using it and they start realizing how much capacity it creates and how much control we have, back to it being an AI, artificial resource for ourselves. Again, we still control what actually goes out there in the world, but it just takes us so that we're not starting at zero. We're starting at 70 or 80%, and we're just going in, tweaking things, making sure that it has our stamp, it has our specific angle. There are times when it might come up with something and it's not quite what we wanted. So I think once people start using it and realizing, how much time it's saving and how productive they start becoming, I think that will be one of the game changers. And also just understanding, because there is some fear around it, because it is so big and people are always talking about
Overwhelming, yeah.
Very overwhelming how much information there is. So really like focusing on your world, how this can help, and starting to get yourself some exposure in small ways, and then kind of building on. And if it has to do with integrating with your into your organization, what I find is you just start with pain points. Everybody has a pain point, whether it's personally or whether it's in their organization. This just takes forever, or here's where things have a bottleneck. Starting and looking at those existing problems and seeing how AI could be the grease that oils that wheel to make things go smoother, to now increase your capacity so that you can do more.
And I think that's really a great message for us to leave this podcast episode on, which is the women who are going to thrive, in this next iteration of building a business when we have AI sort of present in the background. It's not that they need to be the most technical. They just need to be strategic. So they're the people who are going to win, the women who are going to win are going to strive to be, the ones who are going to thrive are going to strive to be the most strategic using AI, because it sounds like AI is here to stay.
It is here to stay. Mm-hmm.
Couple of quick questions, quick rapid fire questions I was going to ask you. Just need a quick answer, like one word. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Biggest AI mistake high earners make?
They're afraid of it.
Fair. True. And then one prompt you think every executive should try this week?
If they're not using a large language model, they should use one of the large language models and ask it how they could be more effective. And they'd be surprised to see what it comes back and tells them in terms of how it could help them.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm going to ask it. I don't think I've asked that question. So noted for me. Thank you so much, Dion. This has been powerful because it removes fear and replaces it with strategy. You left us with so many gems that I took note of, that I plan to use to up my game with AI. So for the women who are listening, who know she's under leveraged, like most high earning women are, what's that first small step that you can take this week based on what Dion's talked about? Do you have any other small step that you think a woman who's under leveraged, Dion, could take this week?
Well, what I would do, which is what I do with anything new, is I actually use YouTube. YouTube is one of my biggest tools to go on there and educate yourself. If you haven't already done training, there's tons of content in there. Again, be mindful of the sources you find, but educate yourself so that you're coming from a place of understanding and knowledge, as opposed to just, what you hear on the news. So definitely find some mechanism to educate yourself. YouTube would be the fastest and the quickest way to get started.
And what about you? Where can they find you if they want to check out maybe some of the programs you have to become more AI literate as a woman, a high earning woman?
So I put a lot of content out on LinkedIn. So anybody could find me, Dion England, on LinkedIn. I have a YouTube channel as well that is also under Dion England, where I focus a lot about leadership skills. So those are two of the main places that people could find me.
Okay, and we're going to also add it to our show notes. So community, I hope that you've been paying attention because it's some really great information on how to leverage AI in your business to grow. And because really, we've all learned this, right? You don't scale by adding more hours. You don't scale that way. That's the old way of thinking. You scale by protecting your decision-making power and multiplying your output strategically, because AI is actually not about replacing brilliance. It's about amplifying it. So ladies, use AI to protect your energy, as Little Sims has said. So that's it for today's episode of the Hiring Women podcast. And if you've loved today's conversation, I would love for you to stay connected. Follow our firm's LinkedIn page at Team Jackie Porter, because that's where we share insights, resources, and updates you won't want to miss. And if you'd like to keep listening to more episodes of this podcast, you can find us on all of your favorite audio platforms. And that includes Spotify, Deezer, Amazon Music, Player FM, and much more. Just search for the Hiring Women podcast and hit follow so you never miss a conversation. And feel free to like and share our podcasts with a friend if something resonated for you. So until next time, keep building, keep earning, and keep living the life you want. Be in touch soon, hiring community. And thank you again, Dion, for being here.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Running all day, hustle refined, shattering ceilings, she's fierce and untamed, bosses her title, wealth.
Yeah, you see,